I am alive. Minister Amber. Amber, the minister of healing. My goal, as I've stated before, is not just to minister to believers. As a matter of fact, I'm more focused on non-believers because I am someone who just does not know. I got some, I have Libby. Libby is a app for people that have a library card. I don't know if it does, if it gives access to anyone in any state, but if you check out, if you have a library, if you have a library card with your local library, you can download an app called Libby, and it gives you access to many books, audiobooks, visual books. You can download them. You can all kinds of stuff on your mobile devices. But belief. I wanted to share with you the origin of believe, the origin of the word believe. Because many times in the Bible, it references to those that believe. I haven't educated myself enough on the actual translation, like the original or the literal translation of the Bible, which is something I'd love to do. I'm very interested in reading the literal translation of the Bible, word for word, how it would translate, to see if there is a difference in my great, not perception, but my, you know what I'm saying, what the translation says to me. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, believers and non-believers. What does believe mean? Where did the word originate? Believe in English, alternative forms believe, spelled with two E's. It says obsolete next to it. I guess that's no longer used. Etymology, from Middle English, beleven, or byleven, from Old English, beliefen, to believe. A later variant to Proto-Germanic gwalabijana, to have faith, believe. Cognate with Scots, believe, to believe, compared. Okay, it goes through all these. I'm not going to read all that right there, the etymology. But, sorry. Verb, believe. Third person singular, simple present, believes, present participle, believing, simple past and past participle, believed. 1, transitive, to accept as true, particularly without absolute certainty, i.e., as opposed to knowing. Quotations. If you believe the numbers, you'll agree we need change. Or, I believe there are fairies. 2, transitive. To accept that someone is telling the truth. Why did I ever believe you? 3, intransitive. To have religious faith, to believe in a greater truth, quotations. After that night in the church, I believed. 4, should we delete this sense? Transitive. To consider, likely, think, reckon. Do you think this is good? Believe it's okay. Do you believe this to be okay? Antonyms, disbelieve. Usage notes, okay. The transitive verb believe and the phrasal verb believe in are similar but can have very different implications. To believe someone or something means to accept specific pieces of information as truth. Believe the news, believe the lead witness. To believe a complete stranger means to accept a stranger's story with little evidence. To believe in someone or something means to hold confidence and trust in that person or concept. Believe in liberty, believe in God. To believe in one's fellow man means to place trust and confidence in mankind. Meanings sometimes overlap. To believe in a religious text would also require affirming the truth of at least the major tenets. To believe a religious text might likewise imply placing one's confidence and trust in it, in addition to accepting its statements as fact. So, when the Bible says those to believe. I think I said in one of my earlier videos, God doesn't necessarily have to mean, okay, for people that don't want to believe in God, can't believe in God, aren't able to believe in God, it's very possible because I've been in situations where I 100% completely refused to believe that there was a God in control of anything because of what I was going through. And some of us are in positions in life where there's nothing that's going to make us believe that. Nothing. Because we've been through such horrific things that there's no way on God's green earth that he would allow anyone to go through the things that some people have gone through. And that's based on believe it or not, usually we come to that conclusion based on growing up, learning a certain degree or a certain level of gaining a certain level of understanding when it comes to God. For us to turn around and say, no, there isn't one. Especially when it comes from being so hurt and traumatized or whatever. Needless to say, earlier I said in my video, the concept of God doesn't have to be a deity. The concept of God doesn't have to be any number of gods or any one God or any God in particular. God is good. And I'm not saying God as in God, specifically a person. As human beings and using English language, we hear God and we assume, because of the way society has interpreted and taught the concept of God, that it's an entity or a being. To me, I like to consider that we are all capable of being gods or godlike. And God to me is the concept of good, not an entity, not a being, not anything we need to worship, except for the concept of being good. And it's obvious that a lot of people will argue, okay, well, there's a fine line between what's good and what's bad. Okay, no, there's not. Anything that's good will not harm anyone. There are things that are good that do not harm anyone at all. That's not arguable, okay? There are some things that can benefit people, but at the same time, there's still consequences for those things. So to me, those things aren't necessarily good, but they can be beneficial. There's a difference. Now, bad, obviously, we're not stupid. If it's hurting someone else other than you, without their permission, then it's bad. And by hurting, I mean, there are some natural consequences that are painful, like when someone dies. Okay, we can't stop people from dying because it hurts other people. That's just natural common sense. There are things, not natural common sense, that's common sense. There are things that have natural consequences, like when someone breaks up in a relationship. You can't choose to stay in that relationship because the good thing to do, the good thing that's not going to hurt anything is to stay together, or hurt anyone is to stay together, because breaking up would cause hurt. That's not the same hurt or harm I'm talking about. And I think when we impose consequences, we impose consequences on each other that are not natural. That's when we start to be overexposed to pain, emotional, physical pain, things that we're not able to tolerate, and we start to get traumatized. So that being said, my concept of God is not an entity. I do catch myself out of habit, still praying sometimes, oh God, if you can you help me and whatever. But it's not anything I'm doing for any other reason except for habit. I know in my mind, I know in my heart that my belief of what God is the concept of good. And in the back of my mind, in my subconscious, I have the answers that I need to life. I have the abilities and the knowledge and the wisdom to do the things I need to do and to make the choices and the decisions I need to make. It's just a matter of accessing them. Now, if I don't have them in here, I can always find them on the internet, educate myself through books, through watching videos on YouTube. You can educate yourself in any number of ways. Even watching and reading something that you don't agree with can educate you and help you to understand your own beliefs, your own concept of God, your own choices for your own life, and help you to hone your skill of doing no harm. That's my whole goal. Other than living life to my fullest potential, I want to avoid doing harm to others. Sometimes I'm not so great at that. I've been abused. I've been abused in several different ways by several different people. So it's when you're abused, it's like a bad influence. We're all growing every day. So when we're abused, it's an influence on us. So sometimes we get those behaviors and we start having the same behaviors towards other people. I want to be very mindful and very aware of that. So to me, God is in my subconscious. It's the concept of being good. It's the ability to be aware as I possibly can of my actions and to analyze them and think about them. And when I get to the point where I'm making decisions or saying things or doing things that could be harmful to others, I have to stop, take a step back, separate myself from everyone, and really take a look at myself, because that's not acceptable to me to hurt others. So that's God acting through me, my God in my head, my God in my mind, my subconscious, my soul, my goodness has to be dominant. It's like feeding the right wolf. Or feeding, is that how they say it? Feeding the right wolf? Whichever you feed the most is the one that will be the strongest. So we all have potential to be evil. We all have potential to be good. That's how I see it. Godly and evil. God, the devil. I don't see them as entities. I don't see them as anything except for concepts of, what's the word? Conduct, I guess. How you conduct yourself. So belief for non-believers, it's a confidence. It's the ability to trust. It's the ability to trust yourself, your inner God. It's you don't have to be a believer in Christ. You don't have to be a believer in God. But like I said before, believe in yourself. Believe and know that you have the answers. And if you don't have the answers, you have the ability to find them. We have access to so much material, so many what are they called? Outputs. See, I have a hard time finding the right words sometimes, but we have so much access to so much wisdom and so much knowledge. It's ridiculous. And I think we need to use those things, like, seriously. I think a lot of us just grow up being taught something and we leave it at that. Like, one of my biggest hurdles right now is involving my mother. Naturally you have that instinct. We as children of parents, it's a natural thing to lean towards or trust or confide in your parents, to believe in your parents. It's just, I guess it's naturally instilled in you. I don't know. Me, I have a hard time standing up for several reasons, especially to my parents, specifically my mother. Because a lot of what she says, or a lot of the things we discuss, I know are incorrect. I don't know if she knows they're incorrect. I don't know if she realizes the discrepancies. But I was raised not to buck the system. I was raised not to what's the word? To challenge authority. I was raised not to challenge authority. I'm not saying I never challenged authority, because if there was anybody, I wasn't a bad kid. I think I've said this a million times too. I was not a bad kid. But I was raised not to challenge authority. Like, that's it. And so when someone puts themselves in a position of authority in my life, whether it's done appropriately or not, if they find a way psychologically or physically to place themselves in a position of authority over me, I'm very submissive. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous for someone like me. And that's part of why I sit here alone every day with no one but the people I know I can love and trust. And even some of the people I know and love and trust, I keep at a certain distance, because I'm not even able to trust them either. Like, to a certain degree, there's still a certain degree of distrust in everybody, because I've been abused by people who were supposed to be protective of me and weren't. People who claimed to be protective of me and weren't. People I thought to be acting in my best interest, when it turns out they weren't. And so when that trust is destroyed with so many people that are so close to you, like, it's just natural. I don't know how to, I don't know if I'm saying this right, but especially your parents, when the trust between you and your parents is destroyed, it doesn't matter who destroys it. Actually, no, I take that back. When the trust between you and your parents is destroyed, and I'm not saying your parents' trust of you, I'm saying when you lose trust in your parents, belief, faith, confidence. When you cannot believe in your parents anymore, that's another perception of God. God the Father, Jesus the Son, and then the Holy Spirit is the family unit and in whole, everyone in spirit. There's a spiritual connection in a family. There's also a spiritual connection in a community, parents, children, and the community. It can go a lot of different ways, a lot of different perceptions. But when the parental or the authoritative trust is broken, like you question who's going to protect you, especially when you are actually abused to the point where you are not confident in protecting yourself. So then it becomes even more dangerous. So this is why I want to come on here. Belief for non-believers. It's not about God. It's not about God. It's your concept of God can be whatever you want it to be, just like NA teaches, okay? I am not an NA fanatic. I was required to go to NA meetings. I went to whatever I was, yeah. I'm not an NA person because I feel like we get into NA meetings and sometimes people like glorify their drug use, or they glorify the destruction that they either perpetrated on other people, and maybe not intentionally, but they're like, oh man, I remember when I used to do this. And it's just so funny. And I'm just like, I don't have anything in common with any of these people because I was never one of those people. Like, seriously, I did a few drugs in my life and I'm not going to lie about that. But I've never been like, my life was not destroyed by drug use. My life was destroyed by people claiming that I was a drug addict, letting drugs destroy my life. Like, their judgment of me and the fact that I had used drugs before is what destroyed my life. They assumed that I had an addiction. They assumed that I had a problem with drugs. I never had positive drug tests. I never got arrested for drugs. I wasn't out there selling my body for drugs. I wasn't out there selling my belongings for drugs. I wasn't losing my roof over my head for drugs. I wasn't going without food for drugs. I'd never done any of that. Like, seriously. So to go to NA, it's very difficult for me to relate, number one. And number two, it's a very anxious and stressful situation for me because there's a lot of people. It's like very closed in, and I can't tolerate the crowds unless I'm with someone I feel safe with. Fortunately for me, when I was going to NA, I was with someone who was, at the time, he was 10 years clean and sober. He was working in the mental health field. An amazing person, one of the most amazing people I've ever met in my life. It's going to make me cry right now because due to the circumstances and my custody issues, I did things I'm not proud of. I let people go that I probably shouldn't have, but I'm glad that they're happy and they're healthy and they have a family now and they're doing well. But anyways, that's that person I always felt safe with. I never, ever, ever felt abused or neglected by that person. And that's like the only reason I could tolerate the NA meetings I was required to go to. So when you do meet someone, when you do have someone that you can have full belief, trust, confidence in, keep them around. Like, keep them around. Even when you feel like you're not good enough for them, they're going to be the ones that remind you that if you don't believe in anything else, believe in yourself. Seriously. I can't preach that enough. Like, belief doesn't just mean, okay, believe, you have to be a believer. Someone with confidence, someone that can trust, someone that can be trustworthy. It's not about belief in Jesus Christ or God. It's really not what it's about. I really want to start doing some videos. Oh yeah, I got some devotions. I was trying to find devotions that weren't like God-based, but I guess I'm just not patient enough to like read all the introductions to stuff. I did come across, however, I think Chicken Soup for the Soul is like the closest, and even that's God-based. But there's a book that I started to, I just borrowed from Pima County Library called The Eyes of the Heart by Tracy Peterson. It's a Bethany House publisher book, or is the publishers. They're one of the leading Christian publishers out there. If I'm not mistaken. That's just a guess because I hear about them a lot, Bethany publishers. Let's see. I'm going to read the introduction What did I just say the title was? The Eyes of the Heart, Tracy Peterson. The introduction says, as a child, I always thought people saw life the same way. I thought boys, girls, men, women, everyone had the same gifts and vision for the world around them. I was wrong. As I grew up, both spiritually and physically, I came to see the uniqueness of each individual. I don't think this lesson was driven home any more clearly than when my sister Karen commented to me that she couldn't string two words together and have them make sense. How could this be, I thought? Didn't everyone possess the desire to write and the ability? I figured writing was one of those original 3 basics you learned in school. How could she stand there and tell me she didn't have what it took to do this? Gradually, I heard other people say the same thing. And silly as it sounds, that was when I came to better understand that God's gifts and the talents he gives are uniquely designed for the person he desires us to be. With this in mind, the concept for this book was born. I came to realize that some people find it easy to see God in everyday life, while others struggle with the burdens they carry, unable to see much of anything. Sometimes obstacles keep them from seeing the truth, and sometimes the truth is the very last thing they want to see. Having been in both places, it has become my desire to share with you how God opened the eyes of my heart. I want to share this because these lessons changed my life, and like a very special party where everyone is going to have a marvelous time, I didn't want you to miss out. So settle back and view the world through my eyes, if you will. Open your heart to the wonder of God's picture lessons. Let the eyes of your heart be enlightened that you might have hope that comes not from a book or from me, for we will both fade away to dust. No, let the hope come from the King of the universe who loves you now, even as he loved you on the cross. Oh, and by the way, my sister Karen has a marvelous ability with numbers. She can do algebraic expressions in her sleep, a talent God did not see fit to bless me with. Unique in the Lord, you bet. Ah, the wonder of God. Tracy. Okay. So obviously she believes in God. She's just wanting people to read her book and gain from it what they can. She's not forcing God on anyone. She just wants people to see things from her eyes, to see it with her, see her perception. Just reading the introduction, I'm like drawn to this book, even though I'm not a fan of everyone saying, oh, God, 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 because I feel God has been a very destructive force in my life. The way my family has brought him to me. Again, sometimes I struggle with saying things the right way, but my concept of God, I feel very judged. I feel very criticized. I feel not good enough. I feel alienated because I'm not doing things the way God wants me to do them. I feel like a bad person sometimes, or I felt like a bad person sometimes. And until I actually took the concept of God out of everything and looking to God for answers and praising God for miracles and all this other stuff, and I started to appreciate myself and my abilities rather than focusing on my inabilities or my disabilities, now I'm able to start to grow. Now I'm able to start to function and become functional and to reach my full potential because I'm not focused on what I'm doing wrong. I feel like that's what the Bible and God does to me. Everyone's different, so it may not be everyone's experience, but this is just mine. This is just my experience. This is how God has been overbearing on me my whole life. Like I felt like there was a certain thing I had to fit into. Like I had to fit into something that I just didn't quite agree with or understand. And I felt was so overly critical and misunderstanding of people that aren't like them. Like, I don't want to say all Christians are that way because they're not. I went to a church called Harvest in Riverside County, Riverside, California. And they were very welcoming and very, we were homeless. We were going from a shelter to Harvest, and they were very open to us. They weren't critical of us. They treated us just like everyone else because we were just like everyone else. Some of us went in there nice and booted and suited. Some of us didn't have the ability to do that, and they still treated us just like people. And I didn't ever feel rejected there. As a matter of fact, I was quite emotional every time I went, and just, it's a big church. Harvest is a big church. And the pastor that was there, God, I can't for the life of me remember his name. But we had a wonderful guy, a wonderful man and his sister, Sherry. They used to pick us up in a van. and take us to church. And sometimes we'd have pizza, we would hang out. They're awesome people. I really wish I could be back in touch with them. I'm sure they would love to see how much better I'm doing. I'm not so sure they would be so keen on the idea that I'm not as accepting of God as I was at that point. But I've been through a whole lot since I left that shelter. I've been terrorized in a way that nobody should ever have to be terrorized. I still don't have a full understanding of it. And it's very difficult when you have family that's not willing to sit down and listen and hear you out. They're more focused on the wrongs that you've done, or wrongs that they feel you have perpetrated, their perception of things, which, I mean, there's always going to be misunderstandings. There's always going to be misperceptions. People are always going to see things their way. But until you're able to sit down and effectively communicate these things and accept, if you confront somebody with something they did and your perception of it, and they say, oh, whoa, wait, no, that was not even close to what I was trying to say or do. That's not what my intentions were. You still have to, as the other person, whether you want to accept their intentions or not, things are not going to progress or resolve until you accept that their intentions are nothing you can determine. Like, if they tell you, hey, that wasn't my intention, and I'm sorry that you took it that way, you have to accept that. Like, you can't just say, no, it wasn't. Yes, it was. No, it wasn't your intentions. Your intentions were this. You were doing this to do this and that to do this. And that's what I feel like my mom kind of does to me. Like, she doesn't accept that I'm trying to help her understand. Sometimes I say the wrong things. Sometimes I say things trying to say one thing and it comes out as something completely different. I watch my YouTube videos. I watch my Instagram videos. I watch my Twitter videos. And sometimes like, oh my God, did I really just say that? I totally in my mind, or not in my mind, but while I was making the video, I swear I said something completely different. But when it came out, it sounds like something like you could take it in a whole 50 different directions. Like, seriously. And I understand sometimes where the confusion comes in. What I don't understand is why no one is open to communicate. We have to be believers. We have to be trusting and understanding and accepting of each other, confident in each other, and stop being such naysayers when it comes to any of us sharing our experiences. Like, and this isn't this isn't meant as an insult either. My stepfather told me, well, everyone thinks they have PTSD these days. And I don't think he understands that a lot of people do have PTSD these days. And a lot of us aren't looking for an opportunity to be exceptions to the rules, or an excuse to get away with things, or a reason to not do something. A lot of us just want understanding and the ability to re-expose ourselves at our own threshold, at our own pace, we know what we can tolerate. Sometimes we push ourselves too hard, and for other people to say, oh no, you can do this. You don't have PTSD. You weren't traumatized. Everyone can do this. Why can't you? And for us to be pressured like that, it's very frustrating. And then we start to be even harder on ourselves. So, if we could just be believers. I know some of us have bad track records. Yes, we make mistakes, but as Corinthians, 1 Corinthians 13:13 says, love holds no record of wrong. Like, seriously, if you truly love somebody, you can sit down and understand that, okay, if this person made a mistake, they made a mistake. You can't sit there and hold on to it. It's going to be destructive, not only to you, but to the person that, like, seriously, there's some things, okay, I did, and I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. But for it to constantly be held over my head or brought to my attention when I've already paid the consequences for it becomes destructive. Like, it does. It really does become destructive. When you forgive someone, you don't have to forget, but it's not, give me a break. Keep that caution, keep that wall, keep that whatever, the barrier, in the boundary that you need to build to feel safe around that person that wronged you, but don't constantly beat them over the head with what they did. Does that make sense? Like, be a believer in them, that they can do different, that they were really sorry. And if you accepted the apology, then that means you're a believer. You have confidence that they're really apologizing and apologetic, and they're going to do what they need to do to be sure they don't make that mistake or do that wrong towards you again. I don't understand why I was raised with all these concepts and understandings, but it seems like my mom doesn't even. I keep saying I'm going to stay away from saying things about my mom. I'm seriously not trying to be hurtful or critical of my mother. I don't understand how I understand these concepts and why she doesn't see. I don't know. Okay, but anyways, belief, the origin of the word believe. Check out the book. I might share it on my YouTube channel. I don't know. Check out the book, The Eyes of the Heart. I haven't read anything but the introduction, but I like that she brought up immediately that she always thought, and I felt that way for a long time too. For a great deal of my life, a lot of the symptoms of my disorder, of my difference, I like to call it a difference, not a disorder, because okay, well, I guess how is disorder so negative? Disorder is really not negative. It's just things being out of order. My difference, autism spectrum disorder, I'm almost positive is what I have, and CPTSD. Crap. How I certain things I experience that are difficult for me, I haven't always been able to voice. And many times when I did voice things, people didn't understand that just because they were something small for them, to me, it was a big deal. With things as little as like sensory processing is difficult to deal with because there's no way for you to help another person understand how overwhelming sensory processing can be. Like, it's something that everybody does on a daily basis. You process you have 5 senses for a reason. And when your sensory processing is out of whack, some things can be grossly exaggerated, and some things like sounds, for instance. There was one point in my life, there was an experience in my life. I was at dinner with my baby's father. It was a busy restaurant. We were both sitting there. He was talking to me. There was a table full behind him. There was TVs on. There was people behind me. I was trying to speak to him. He was speaking to me, and I couldn't. All of the sounds were melding together. Like, it wasn't that he wasn't audible. He was definitely audible. Like any other person could sit there and carry on the conversation, despite the noise going on around them, because he was close enough to be louder than everyone. But certain tones of his voice were being masked by the other sounds in the area. And this is me understanding my sensory processing or disorder or issues. I was not catching or understanding what he was saying. And I was literally like looking at him, trying to read his lips as I listened. But because of so much going on around me that wasn't even loud to him, it was all just melt. And I was like, what, huh? I can't understand what you're saying. And he got so frustrated. He got up, he put $100 bill on the table they set our food down in front of us. We didn't even touch our food. He got up, set $100 bill on the table, and walked out because I could not hear what he was saying. And he got so frustrated because to him, it wasn't loud. It wasn't noisy. There was absolutely no reason why I should not have been able to hear him. And people really get frustrated with me a lot because they don't understand. My sensory processing is different. Like some things are grossly exaggerated. Some things are not. Some things combine together. Some things actually are processed and sound like a weed eater. A weed eater, to me, when I first start a weed eater, it sounds like a newborn baby screaming in pain. Like, I remember one time my daughter had her pinky pinched in a buckle. And the cry that it just starts off silent and then they start to scream. Seriously, when I hear a weed whacker or a weed eater, that's the first thing I hear. And I stop everything I'm doing and I'm just like, And I have to actually stop and physically force myself to listen and perceive only that, process only that, just to reassure myself and confirm in my mind of what it is exactly. That it's not an infant screaming. It's not a kid outside. And you know what I'm saying? Life gets difficult when you actually have to stop and make sure you're interpreting or perceiving everything correctly. It gets very exhausting, very overwhelming. Yeah, how I got from belief to this. Probably because my mom is not a believer. My mom is not a believer that there is anything different about me. Her expectations of me are not too high, but let me get all emotional. Her expectations are not too high, because even the expectations she has that I can't meet, there's some that I can overachieve that aren't her expectations of me, if that makes any sense. She expects of me some things that I know I am not capable of. And maybe I'm doing the same thing to her. Maybe I'm expecting my expectations of her are things that she can't. I don't know. It's not that my mother's expectations are too high. It's just that she doesn't have the right expectations of me. I know my limits. I know my abilities. I know my strengths. I know my weaknesses. And I try at all costs to navigate in a manner that leans more towards my strengths. But when people are constantly focusing on things that I'm not strong in, and they're expecting me to do things that are not my strengths, it's making me less confident. I'm becoming less of a believer in myself. I'm becoming less confident and trusting in me, and I can't allow that to happen. I don't know if I tied that all in right, and I don't know if I'm just babbling on, but it's been 37 minutes, and I know once you get past 30 minutes, people don't want to keep watching. So, The Eyes of the Heart by Tracy Peterson. It seems like it's going to be a good book. I'd love to share it. Maybe I'll start sharing that like I used to share my daily devotions. But belief for non-believers, like I said before, if nothing else, if you don't believe in anything else, I personally don't know whether God exists. I don't think I want to spend the rest of my life trying to prove that he does. If he exists, he doesn't need my help convincing anyone that he is in existence. But I know that if he does exist and he created man, he created us with free will. He created us with the ability to become just like him if he exists. I don't think it's absolutely necessary to sit here and focus on worshiping him for everything that we have. We need to appreciate and understand what we have. Don't take it for granted. And that includes ourselves. Give ourselves credit for the things that we do and accomplish. Give other people credit for the things that they do and accomplish. Praise each other. Just even for the simple things. Like I saw one day, someone was getting mad that, why are you applauding someone for something that's expected? Are you kidding me? That's why we don't do the things that are expected of us anymore. Because our brain is wired in a way that we have a pleasure-seeking brain. And when you're applauded, when you're given gratitude or encouragement, it's pleasureful. It's a pleasure. Your mind seeks pleasure. So if you don't get pleasure out of just the basic things in life anymore, you're going to stop doing them. I saw someone discouraging people. Oh my God, why are you applauding them and giving them praise for doing something that's expected? Are you serious? Why do anything that's expected if there is no reward for it? I'm not saying you have to get personal gain from everything, but you want things to be pleasureful, rewarding. You want reward in your life. Like, if you can get up every morning, make yourself breakfast and find a reward in that, then do it. If someone gets up with you in the morning and they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm making you breakfast, and you're just like expecting it, and you don't ever say thank you, one day they're going to stop making you breakfast. Unless they're me, of course. I probably won't. I'll probably still be like, oh, what do you want for breakfast? How can I make you smile this morning? Because I wake up ridiculously happy usually. And then things go.
I know.
Oh, it's alive.
I'm not an it.
I'm just teasing you, darling. She's not an it. She's a human being just like the rest of us. We're pushing 40 minutes here.
Female.
I know I wasn't speaking in gender terms. I was just being silly. You know how ridiculously closely related genders are? Like, I was telling
I'm hungry.
Oh, she's hungry.
And
Speaking
I
of,
gotta pee.
well, you know where the facilities are.
Oh.
Isn't she adorable? You're excused.
I love you, mother.
I love you too.
I love you more.
I love you more.
I
More.
never wake up happy.
I love you more.
I
Yes,
never wake up happy.
she's
Every
not a
time I
morning
wake up,
person.
I sit there. I'm like, I want to go back to sleep.
She's not a morning person.
No, I'm not.
But I'm grateful for that because it gives me the opportunity to practice encouraging people and trying to make people happy. And when she's like so grumpy as this, she got a sour puss face, and I just do something silly and off the wall, I make her smile and I make her laugh. And I love that. So by her being grouchy, it encourages me to encourage her. And then that builds better habits for both of us. And I love it. Just like she's learning, I'm learning. I'm going to be 80 years old, 100 years old, and I'm still going to be growing. So, yeah. Everyone have a fabulous evening. Belief, confidence in. You don't have to be a believer in God. Be a believer. Be confident in the fact that there is truth, there is good, there is love out there. Belief for non-believers. Oh, YouTube and there.